Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. In the co-captain's chair today, you know him from In the Prague Seat. He's the owner and proprietor of the Laser's Edge. Welcome, Ken Golden.
Hey, hey,
What's
Pete.
happened? Long time no
Everybody.
speak, actually.
Long day, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Couple days.
Is my hair longer?
I think so.
Due for a hair. Due
Yeah.
for a haircut.
Do for a little trim. Yeah, there you go.
Well, hey, we got the festival coming up. I want to look good for my fans.
That's right. That's right. It's only a week away, not less than a week now. Less than a week. So yeah. We hope to see you guys out at the Chance in Poughkeepsie, New York, October 1st. So
Yep.
but today, the first bit of business is here on this Sunday morning. We're going to be ranking the catalog. It's kind of a short catalog, 6 studio albums, not that short, not that big, of a very cool band from Sweden who have been around since the early 90s, right? Early 90s, mid 90s. What's that first?
The first album came out in 93.
93. Yeah, there you go. So, they've been around now almost 30 years. For me, this band always kind of got overshadowed by another band from Sweden. There are some similarities, there's some differences, both really, really cool bands. That band, of course, is Anekdoten. This band is Anekdoten.
Yep.
And they're one of the, there was this kind of in the early 90s, there was this big rush of all these prog rock bands coming from the underground from all over the world. I think we kind of call it like the third coming, the third wave of prog rock. And I remember being a fan in the early 90s, and just everywhere you turned, there was another prog band coming out. And Sweden were one of the countries that were really doing it.
Well, what happened, the thing is, I used to deal with Stefan Dimla, who ran Mellotron. Mellotron was a great record shop in Stockholm, and he started a label. And he released the first Anglagard album. And then I had the funny incident with Stefan where he was telling me about this band that he thought I would like and I might be interested in signing. And he wouldn't tell me about the band. He sends me a cassette, and I get the cassette, and it's Lamberg. And Stefan's the bass player. He didn't want me to know that he was in the band. So I signed Lamberg, and I was kind of immersed in that whole period. And then I was doing well with Lamberg, and I got the original Anecdoten demos. And I wanted to do that album so bad, you have no idea. And I don't remember if it was Jan. I think it was Jan Erik that I had an ongoing dialogue. They actually had my contract, and Pete, I never wanted to do an album so bad. I still have the cassette with the demos hiding someplace.
Wow.
And they were pretty close to what came out of Vemod. So they said, I was told that they were spread out. They were, Anna Sophie, I think, was going to San Francisco for the summer. They were spreading out all over the place for the summer. They said they're going to reconvene after the summer, and they're going to decide what they want to do. After the summer, they reconvened. They told me that they decided they're going to release it themselves. So at least I didn't lose out to another label. So it was like, good luck. So I've always had a great relationship with them. I think they're great people. Nicholas has this other band, My Brother the Wind. I did one of their albums, and hopefully, if he, maybe someday we'll do another one.
I was going to say, it's been a long time already.
Yeah, every once in a while. And he actually told me, I think it was last year, he said there's a possibility they may be getting back together to do something. But they're all great people. Peter's a lot of fun. Peter used to work at Mellotron. I used to call over there. Peter would answer the phone. Another guy that used to answer the phone every once in a while was Michael Ackerfeld. Michael worked at Mellotron. So, and then I did the first White Willow album. I moved over to Norway. I left Sweden. I went to Norway, and but that whole something fell. That whole Scandinavian territory, and that was it. I mean, everybody called it like the Swedish revival, 92, 93. There was all kinds of stuff coming out.
Yeah. Yeah,
all kinds of stuff.
Very cool time. Yeah. Brings back memories, right?
Yeah. The only thing with Anecdoten is they're not that prolific.
No, as we're going to talk about here.
Yeah,
so, almost 30 years and 6 studio albums. That's it.
Yeah, they have a lot of live albums. They have some really good live albums, but they can wait a good 4 or 5 years between releases. Before they go back. the studio.
So in saying all that, so there's a little bit of history for you. We're going to start, of course, with our number 6 and work our way back to number 1. So I'll have Ken kick us off with his album that comes in number 6.
Okay, and I just preface this by saying that I revisited these. Some of these I hadn't heard in quite some time. I decided that I would listen to these out of order. I didn't want to listen to them chronologically. So I don't know if that's smart or dumb, but I've listened to these again over and over, like since you asked me to do this for the past week or so. So I have a pretty good feel for these. So my number 6 is album came out in 2003, Gravity. And yep. And it's got a lot of melancholy atmosphere, but it seems a little less prog, a little more straight ahead to my ears. It seems like they were going for a more contemporary sound. Whereas the early stuff had a strong King Crimson influence, this had much less so. It was not quite so obvious. Anna Sophie is not playing the cello on the album, and that's kind of a disappointment because that, to me, that was a little bit of the X factor when she was doing that. But there's nothing bad about the album. It's just we're ranking them, and it's the number 6 album, but it's a fine album. They had no bad albums.
No, I was just going to say that too. I did the exact same thing you did. I purposefully didn't re-listen to them in the order that they were released, and there was a couple of them that I never had physical copies of, so I took care of that over the last couple of weeks. Because I just sometimes you like so much stuff gets released year in and year out, and sometimes you hear an album, or maybe in my case I get sent like a digital version to review, and I do that, and I never go out and buy it, even though I like it. And I love this band. I've always really liked them. So I just realized I was missing a few of them. So I've been scooped between you and Greg Walker. I was able to scoop up the couple.
Sure.
So my number 6, again, these are all really good. Nothing bad here. Yeah. I'm going to go with Time of Day from 2007 as my number 6. Fine album. This is their 5th album. Kind of like what you were saying before. It's kind of got modern rock elements mixed with 70s prog. It's got a lot of the characteristics that we love about this band, the kind of angular, heavy riffs, lots of mellotron, flute. You got a little acoustic guitars. The Great Unknown is a terrific track. There's a little bit like alternative rock on here as well, like 30 sounds like that. King Oblivion's great. You got some Moog on here, Mellotron on Sky About to Rain. Every Step I Take is awesome. There's tons of Mellotron on these albums.
On all of their albums.
Oh, it's big time.
It's like the signature.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's some great stuff on here. Prince of the Ocean is great. Every Step I Take, it's really good. Great, cool artwork. It's got this kind of like spooky vibe going on here. Yeah. There's the band right there. So yeah, it's number 6, but it's still really, really good. So I don't think any of these albums. I rate stuff on a scale of 1 to 5 or 0 to 5, 5 being perfect. There's nothing under a 4.
Right. Absolutely. So, yeah.
That's my number 6.
If you're new to the band and you don't have access to our number 1, their number 6 is just, it'll do you till you find number 1.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yep. So
my number 5 is The Time of Day. So yeah, I mean, flip-flop, I just, I said, I'm looking at my notes, and I said the Crimson sounds are pretty much non-existent apart from the Mellotron. They moved away from it. Nicholas is singing in addition to Jan Erik. His voice I find to be a little more expressive than Jan Erik. But no one buys an Anecdoten album for the vocals. They're there, but it was never their strong suit. They were like guitar and bass player who also kind of sang because they never had a singer, they fit the music just fine. One cool thing, they brought in Gunnar Bergstein from Flaskebrunner, great Swedish band. They brought him in to guest on flute, and that's pretty cool. There's one track in particular that jumped out at me called "In for a Ride," which has this creaky organ sound, like this low rent organ sound that kind of reminded me of like Dave Sinclair, and it just gave it like a little bit of like a Canterbury touch, So and by the way, all of these guys in the band, I mean, they're huge prog heads.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they they know their stuff. So especially Peter's a fanatic. So if you just follow him on Facebook, you'll see the albums he's playing or just bought, whatever.
70s stuff, yeah.
Oh yeah, and he's putting me to shame,
Yeah.
And he's so yeah. So if I say it's kind of Canterbury-ish, you could be sure that was intentional, that they were shooting for that.
Oh yeah.
So Time of Day was my number 5.
Cool. My number 5 was your number 6, Gravity.
Yeah.
Again, 4th album from 2003. There they are again.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, really melodic songs on here. Monolith, Ricochet, big waves of Mellotron. And another thing about this band too, a lot of great big fat bass riffs all throughout the albums.
Yep.
You get the big guitar riffs, the angular guitar, the bass. You always hear the bass. The War Is Over has a little bit of like 90s Porcupine Tree, Anathema feel to it a little bit.
Yeah.
There's some good atmosphere on here. Cell Jack is really, for me, the one track on this album that kind of retains that early kind of King Crimson, dissonant, angular, menacing type of sound. But the rest of it is really kind of accessible. It's proggy, it rocks, it's modern sounding, but there's enough kind of dips into the 70s because that's what we do.
It's like I said, it has a more contemporary sound. I think, maybe they were listening to a little what Steven Wilson was doing, maybe a little bit like what Opeth was starting to move in that direction. And, there's a little bit of a cross-pollination, and I think they all know each other. So not surprising though.
Not at all. So it's my number 5. Back to you for number 4.
My number 4, 1999, From Within. Yeah. So that was their 3rd album. Oh man, look how young they are.
I know, right?
So that was and they said they still had some of the Crimson mojo going on. Simon Norberg, who was from Lamberg, he produced the album, and he guests with and some keyboards, and it still sounds like the Anekdoten that I originally fell in love with. And there's a lot of melancholy. It's a fine album. It's just where it falls in the rankings. So we're getting better and better.
Yeah.
So nothing wrong with number 4 out of 6.
I agree, and it's also my number 4. And also this album sounds really Swedish, and that's what I love about it. Kiss of Life is just brooding. You got the 11-minute Hole, which is a really cool track. I know everybody makes fun when I say this, but there's Mellotron everywhere. Firefly is great. Again, the bass is just enormous on this whole album. Sun Absolute, yeah, it's just a killer album, and it's number 4, right? But
that just shows you how good this band is.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, you ready for my next one?
I am.
So we're up to number 3.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with their second album, Nucleus, in 1995. So for me, this is there In the Wake of Poseidon. It's similar in feel to Vemod. It has this good, raw, punkish energy right out of the gate. But yeah, look at them, yeah. But overall,
they're like 17, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but Nicholas still looks like he's 17.
Yeah.
Overall, I didn't hear much of a progression or growth from Vemod, and I just didn't feel that the overall strength of the material matched Vemod. It was kind of like a lateral move. There's nothing bad here, to my ears. It's just a notch or two below Vemod. And I said most bands would kill to put out an album this good. It's a really good album, and like In the Wake of Poseidon, which is I think a very good album. It's overshadowed by by the Monolith.
It's really similar. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's the old saying that a band has a lifetime to make their first album, and 18 months or 12 months to make their second album.
That's it.
In this case, Vemod was 93, Nucleus was 95. That's probably the closest they ever came to to putting out back-to-back albums. And yeah, I mean, it's a great record, but you listen to it and you hear a lot of similarities to Vemod. And I just think the material of Vemod is stronger. So that was my number 3.
So we obviously have the top 3 the same, but probably in different order.
Yeah.
I found it really hard to figure out what I want to put this order in the top 3, because like the 2 of them, there's like a nostalgia factor because they're the 2 original albums, and if you have history with them, history means a lot. And then you have another one that's fairly recent, that's incredible, and arguably could be the best in the catalog, which you don't always say often with a band that's been around for 30 years, right? So I wrestled with this, and I went back and forth and back and forth. And then ultimately, I think I decided to go on nostalgia side, which I do a lot. So I went with my number 3, Until All the Ghosts Are Gone, from 2015, which is freaking tremendous.
Yeah.
This is a really, really, really great album. I mean, you got Shooting Star, which kicks off the album in absolute fine fashion, big heavy riffs, Mellotron creeping all over the place. Nicholas's screaming guitar solo. You got great organ from Anna. It's one of their best songs. It's so good. Get Out Alive is terrific. Until All the Ghosts Are Gone, and Our Days Are Numbered, which is totally a homage to early 70s Crimson. And that's one thing I do want to stress, and we've kind of hinted at it here, their first 2 albums especially, and this album, because I think this kind of goes back to that Crimson type of thing. Man, if you love like the first 2 King Crimson albums, but absolutely the Bill Bruford, John Wetton era,
got the sound.
You have come to the right place. If you love that stuff, vocally they don't really sound alike, right? And these guys do different things because it's more modern sounding. But man, if you like that big, heavy, fat bass, that loud, angry, angular guitars, Mellotron on every song, and great drumming, you're gonna love this band.
And Peter's a really underrated drummer, I think.
I would totally agree with you. Yeah, really, really good.
Yeah, it's got like that sort of, Jan Erik is playing sort of like that wet and throbbing bass line.
Oh yeah, it's so loud and obnoxious and in your face. I just absolutely love it. I love when bands utilize the bass in that fashion. And here they are again, looking a little older, but still, still the guys. But yeah, this is great. I mean, if it wasn't for the 2 albums being so strong, and I've had them since they first came out, I could easily see this ranking higher, and I almost did. I've moved these 3 around so many times.
Can you believe that's 7 years old?
I know.
It's crazy. They're due.
Yeah, they are.
7 years.
Great album cover too. I mean, I love this. This kind of reminds me of like the first Black Sabbath album, right? It's just kind of like creepy and foreboding, and you're looking at it, you're like, all right, what is the story with this guy? Is this the guy from Led Zeppelin 4? Like now, 50 years later with a bag over his head, and I mean, it's very, very cool. So yeah, that's my number 3.
What was I going to say? They even the artwork, they're very influenced by like Keith and the old Black Sabbath and
big time.
Like that. So all right, so my number 2, we're ready for my number 2, right?
Yep.
My number 2, Until All the Ghosts Are Gone. Yeah, that's my number 2. So again, you'll pardon me, I'm reading from my notes here because I wrote a lot about this. Mellotron is in your face. There's Hammond lurking in the background. It has more of an old progressive rock feel. It's not the same as the first 2 albums, but it's not entirely dissimilar. The opening track, Shooting Star, is more up tempo than what you would normally think of Anekdoten. And this may sound strange, but in an odd way, it kind of reminded me of Rainbow. So you know what I mean? In general, I'd say the entire album has more of a positive up tempo feel to it. They've got Theo Travis guesting on flute, and that brings back that old, that old 70s old school vibe. Anna Sophie, she's not playing cello, but it's not really missed because she's putting down so much Mellotron on this record. Yeah. It's it's great. I mean, I was listening to it and I just made notes. I wrote, this is really great. You know, Jan Erik or Nicholas, I'm not sure who, because Nicholas started singing as well. So one of them or both of them developed a little bit as a vocalist. So they're even a little better than they were before, which means they're passable, you know. Writing on the Wall is a killer, heavy riffs playing against, you know, in your face Mellotron. I said that, you know, perhaps it's a good listening companion to what Opeth is doing now. Like
Yeah,
the
that's a
last
good point.
Opeth album,
That's a really good point. Yeah.
you
I do
know,
agree.
and I just said, if this is the future of Anecdoten, we need more of this.
Tomorrow.
It's,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't pay as much attention to it as I probably should have when it came out. I remember getting it, playing it, enjoying it, and I get so much stuff here, you know, sometimes, you know, you should see like you saw what my desk looks like. It's, my desk looks like your wall, you know. So, or, you know, what's behind me, it's crazy. And yeah, so it was really cool. I really enjoyed going back and revisiting these records.
I,
This
I will echo that. You know, I do a lot. I do these shows every week, and you know, it's a lot of re-listening to catalogs you're already familiar with. I will say, out of all the ones I've done in recent memory, this was the most fun because I haven't really listened to these guys a lot in recent years, and
yeah,
revisiting all these albums again was an absolute joy because I
yeah.
think it reaffirmed, maybe for the first time in a long time, that this I think I like this band better than I ever did. And I've always really liked them, but it's almost like, you know, when you don't listen to a band for a while,
Yeah.
it's something, you know, you blink nowadays and it could be 8 years since you've listened to a catalog. Or,
Oh, absolutely.
right.
I could say that easily, especially like with all the releases I've put out. Sometimes, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh man, I haven't played that White Willow album in 15 years or something like that. You
Yeah.
know, it's like you just, you know, you kind of forget.
Yeah,
So
this is so much. But I
yeah.
will be listening to a lot of Anecdoten in the weeks ahead. So I'm really happy we did this show. And I do want to say, because I know you were talking about stuff that you wrote down in your notes, the last sentence I wrote in my notes for Until All the Ghosts Are Gone, tremendous album, exclamation, exclamation,
Yeah.
exclamation.
It was
Really,
exciting. It was
yeah,
kind of exciting to listen to it, you know.
it was. I was like, oh, this is better than I remember it.
You
So
know, when I'm on the prog seat, I talk a lot about like 70s bands. I love the 70s bands. And I love new bands too, current bands, but a lot of them don't resonate with me the way a lot of the older bands do. Now, maybe it's just because I'm an old man and I grew up with some of those things, or it's the sound, but there's something about this band. They, there's just some magic about Anecdote.
it scratches that itch that
It does. It
right?
does. And maybe, you know, because I love the Mellotron and stuff, and they love the Mellotron, and it's, you know, it's that, it's just they got the sound. They got the
Yeah.
sound down.
I often say that the Mellotron is the one thing that binds us all together who love prog. It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. It's always funny to see you run into somebody who like kind of makes fun of it or whatever. But
Yeah.
you know, meanwhile,
We love our Mellotron.
oh yeah, yeah. I used to have one.
Really? I don't know what I do with it, but I'd love to have one. It's like, you know,
mine was, I had a Mellotron that I won at auction, House of Music in New Jersey, where Nectar recorded and a lot of bands, you know, recorded a lot of stuff that was on Passport Records. When they went bankrupt, I won the Mellotron at auction, and I paid $800 for it. And I knew nothing about Mellotrons, absolutely nothing. When I got home, I think I was talking to Dave Keene from Mellotron Archives, and we were going through the whole thing, and it's like, what do you mean? What's a tape rack? It didn't have the tape rack.
The thing on the inside, Ken.
Yeah. Well, luckily they had the tape rack still at the House of Music. So I drove up to West Orange and I got it. And there was supposed to be a road case. It never existed. I think Larry Fast, I remember it had cigarette burns all over it. I think Larry Fast played that Mellotron. He may have taken it out on tour with Peter Gabriel. I'm not sure, but I never got it working. And I wound up selling it at a profit to Dave Keene. He wound up buying it because he rehabbed it. But I just got one quick funny story. So this is when we had just moved in, and we were redecorating our powder room. We were renovating our powder room, and I had the Mellotron sitting in the family room in the corner. And the plumbing supply place, a guy came over from the plumbing supply place with a new sink, and he had this sink on his shoulder, and he's standing in a kitchen, and he just stops in his tracks, and he says, "Is that what I think it is?" I said, "What do you think that is?" He goes, "Is that a Mellotron?" I said, "That's a Mellotron." Yeah. Blew his mind, blew the guy's mind. And then I explained to him about
you're thinking, what the hell does a plumber know about Mellotrons, right?
Right. It was the funniest thing. And I explained to him about my business and the Laser's Edge and the whole thing. And this is back when I was doing printed catalogs. I gave him a catalog, blew his mind. Guy never ordered from me, but never heard from him again, never saw him again. But man, I made that guy's day.
There you go. That's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Dave wanted to buy the Mellotron. I always remember hearing Dave's name at every Near Fest. It's like, well, such and such wants to play, have a Mellotron on stage. We got to call Dave, right? He was
Dave, and then in Europe, the guy was Marcus Resch, and Marcus, I think is still around, and he came out with, I think, his own version of the Mellotron, and so I don't know what happened. I haven't heard from Dave Keene. I don't know if he's still around. I don't know what he's doing, but I made some money on it. So I bought it on the theory that at the time that, when it wasn't so hard to come over here, that bands like White Willow would come over here and tour
and use it.
I'd have a Mellotron for them. Or if there was a band like in the area that needed a Mellotron, I would have the Mellotron. But mine was a wreck. The tape rack was a mess. Dave sent me a fresh set of tapes, but I would have had to like splice them, and I was inept, and and then I got the call one day, and it was like,
take it.
I made $500 on it. I was happy.
There you go. Well, that's a shame you never got to use it, but anyway. So speaking of Mellotron, a lot of Mellotron on my number 2. It's Nucleus from 1995, their second album. Right. Again, I got a lot of nostalgia with this album and the debut for me, and this again. Just like Ken said before, it's kind of derivative of their first album, but not in a bad way. It's, it's heavy, it's ominous, it's creepy, it's beautiful. If you love early Crimson, the light and shade is all over the place on here. I mean, Harvest, great song. Rubank, awesome. Here, sad, melancholy. You get the male and female vocals kind of like drifting all over the place. Mellotron everywhere you look. Big guitar riffs, angular guitar, great bass and drums. Fantastic. It's a fantastic album, but there is an album that most people will say is a little bit better. And we're both going to talk about that next. So yeah. Nucleus, my number 2.
It's just in the shadow, it's in the shadows.
Yeah.
So my number 1 is Vemod, their first album. 1993.
Yep.
And the version to own is the Japanese one, which has the bonus track "Sad Rain," which I think wound up coming out on Chapters. I think, which is a compilation.
Which I do have. Hold on. So
"Sad Rain" is on there.
I believe it is. Yes, it is. Yes,
yeah, it's great. It was a great track. So I gave you a little history, my history with the band, but specifically about that album. I wonder if Nicholas still has that jacket. The cover. Look at the cover art. They were intentionally making it look like the first Black Sabbath, to make it look like, this monochromatic image, like as if Keith had done it.
Yep.
So some people, stupid people, would say that they sound too much like King Crimson on Vemod. And, the influence is undeniable, but to my ears, it just seems like they channel the moodiness and the melancholy of the Bruford era. They don't, the Mellotron, and I think Peter's percussion work also gives you a little bit more of that comparison, that musical link. But Nicholas's guitar work doesn't sound anything like Robert. His playing is very angular. his tone is different. It's just, you know, yeah. So really, we're talking about the feel, just the general vibe that you get when you listen to the album. It reminds you of the Bruford Wetton period of King Crimson, but it's not like they're really like a clone or that some people characterize it as. There are some really cool. It's funny. I don't have the album in front of me. I know this album backwards and forwards, and like I remember the Wheel was the one that had, if I remember correctly, that was one that had like the trumpet on it. I think.
Oh
It
yeah,
was.
yep,
And
yep.
that kind of reminded that almost like a Kenny Wheeler, Kenny Wheeler piece. It's a moody album, and here's the thing I really want to talk about this record. So, the album came out. I got to see these guys play a lot, and they played at Prague Fest. Greg Walker had put on Prague Fest out in Los Angeles, and Anglagard played. They weren't. I don't think they were the same night. Maybe they were, but Anglagard played, and that got released. Musea released it. Actually, I recorded it. I made a digital recording of it, and Anecdoten played. And I was sitting. I believe I was sitting in the front row at the theater. It was Anglagard were fine. They were good. They weren't amazing. I saw Anglagard give better performances years later. Anecdoten's performance was one of the single greatest performances I've ever seen in my life. And I've been to a lot of concerts in my lifetime, as you can imagine. It was the energy level that was coming off the stage was unreal. It was something that I really hadn't experienced, and it was just something I'll never forget. I then, I saw them at Nearfest. I saw them play in Pennsylvania in a small old man's bar, American Legion Hall. Yeah, Tom Gagliardi has some really unflattering photos of me wearing a Hawaiian shirt at that gig, and I mean, it was great. There must have been like, I don't know, 20 of us, and a bunch of old guys like sitting at the bar drinking. It was
Wondered like, who the hell is this band, right?
Yeah, I don't even know how they got booked in there. It literally was like, it was like, I think like a Northeast Philly or something like that, and they were just, and yeah,
What year were they at Nearfest?
boy, I could. You want me to look it up? I don't remember, but they were there at least once.
Yeah.
So
I'll look at it. Yeah.
But it's just everything about Vemod, man. That's it. It just holds up.
2000 Nearfest number 2.
2000. So Vemod, I would say, is really one of the great albums of the 90s. Did we do the 90s? I remember we did. I don't remember. We did the 2000s and the 2010, right?
Yeah, we did. I'm sure we did.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember. I may not have done the 90s. Might have been before my time. But it's a brilliant album.
Yeah.
It really is. And just listening to it again, it lost nothing. For me, it lost nothing, man. Great record. Just a great record.
Yeah, I mean, I echo. I don't know what else I could say. It's fantastic. My closing statement and my little batch of notes here says, an amazing album, powerful, gentle, savage, and graceful, because it does all those things. And sometimes all within one song. I mean, yeah, for instance, like one track always pops out of me, the track called The Flow, which I think is the one song that kind of reminds me of Anglagard a little bit, because, everything is very quiet. And then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, it's like all this frantic stuff. And then the Mellotron comes in, and just like this, like mix of like drama and bombast with tranquility. It's just like within one song, they just give you all these moods. I mean, Karelia is amazing song. The Old Man in the Sea, so good. Yeah, this is terrific.
There isn't a bad track on the album.
No, not at all.
It's all great tracks.
Yeah, it really, and it flows really well too. So, and yeah, if you love Mellotron, So good. So good. So much Mellotron. Yeah, this is a great catalog. And like Ken had mentioned before, there is this double disc set called Chapters, which came out, which is kind of like a best of the material up until the point this came out in 2009, along with some rarities and things that he mentioned. Sad Rain is on here, a couple other things. I think there's some demos of a few tracks on here. So if you want to be a completist with this band, it's probably a good idea to get this, because you'll get some other things that you
in theory, I have cheap copies in stock of Chapters. I just looked it up, and I think I have them for $9, assuming they're sitting on the shelf. Okay. So, if somebody's looking for, if you're looking to just get a taste, it's a good introduction. And the other thing is also, we didn't talk about, they had a lot of really, really good live albums, live in Japan. And so, yeah, as a live band, they're very well documented. And,
well, what would you say is their best live album for someone who wants to jump in?
It's hard. The problem is they're hard to get. They came out in Japan. Let me see. Let me bear with me as I do the quick little Discogs hit and see. Yeah, they had, okay, so there were two. There was what they call the official bootleg live in Japan from '98, and then Waking the Dead live in Japan 2005. And they're both great. The thing about live in Japan is they're doing the material from the first two albums. So, yeah. So it's, and then 2005 has them doing a live version of Sad Rain. They don't really repeat any of the material, I don't think. And yeah, it's focused on the later material. So so the two live albums seem to complement one another very well.
Yeah, and you can still get those. They're a little pricey, but you can get them official bootleg.
Yeah, I don't know. I may have them in stock. The only Anecdoten album, which is, let me see. I was going to say is Vemod. I have Vemod in stock. I have From Within in stock. Chapters, cheap Chapters. I have Nucleus in stock. The other ones are out of stock at the moment. I have a copy of From Within on vinyl. So, yeah.
So for those of you who have yet to listen to this band, and this is all brand new to you, whatever you can get your hands on, do it. Anywhere you start here is a good place to start. Obviously, our top three are probably the ultimate, but they're all really, really good. So go check them out. If you are a fan already, rank them in the order that you like them down in the comments below. And if you're interested in buying some of these, go over to lasercd.com and see what Ken's got in stock, and scoop a couple up and report back after you've heard them and let us know what you think. All right.
Pete, last thing I just want to say, I was looking at my notes here, and at the very top I wrote, most of these albums are packed tightly together in quality. There isn't a real outlier, no radical left turns. Yeah. Listening with 2002 ears does not produce a reappraisal. Well, it does produce a reappraisal in a sense, because, I think the key was listening to these out of sequence. I think that really helped.
Yeah, definitely. I did the exact same thing. I was like, and two of them, obviously I know the best, the first two, but sure. All the other ones I just kind of pulled out and played, and I'm like, and that worked. So yeah, a great catalog, a really, really great catalog, a really great band. And it's been 7 years, guys. If you're watching, when's the next one? Right.
I'm going to make sure that they see this.
Okay. Sounds good. Maybe it'll put a little, pin in their butt to say, okay, maybe we need to get back out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. Remember, go and check out Ken's website and label, lasercd.com, and get your prog infusion on. And we'll see Ken and the rest of the In the Prog Seat guys back once again on Tuesday night. And we hope to see some of you at Sea Tranquility Fall Fest just a little under a week from today. So we'll all be there. Hopefully you will be too. So see you then.
We could bump this.
That's right.
We'll bump this.
A lot of fist bumps.
22. It's 2022. We're going to be bumping fists.
That's right. And hopefully we'll have a couple beers and listen to some great music and do some good prog discussion and metal discussion and all that sort of thing. So we'll see you on Saturday, hopefully. For Ken Golden, I am Pete Pardo. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. Ranking the albums. See you next Sunday. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care.